Friends, I'm speaking to you from our beloved chapel with the image of the crucified and rising Christ behind me. It is an image of death and hope. This past March, one of the last things we did as a parish before we closed was had the Stations of the Cross. One of our parishioners, Nora Hyman, and myself, shortly moved us around and reflected on the meaning of the stations, not just Jesus's dying and death, but our own dying and death in our world. How do we know that we would be confronting real live situations so soon? So this afternoon, I prayerfully meditated on each of the 14 stations in our church. They certainly take on a new meaning since I last did them. For it is easy to see how many ways we are now living and walking the stations of the cross in our city, in our nation, in our world. Friends, the stations of the cross we have been witnessing around the city streets of our nation are inviting us to awaken to a greater consciousness of racial injustices and systematic oppressions. Crosses have been and are being carried for so many years. The stations are historical as well as religious. As many of you know, right here in this very chapel, in 1796, Holy Trinity Parish recorded its very first wedding. There were two slaves, and they needed permission of their owner to marry. Yes, our parish has participated in institutional racism. Last year when we commemorated the 225th anniversary of the building of this chapel, this sacred space, we recognized in our history many African-American parishioners experience the stations of racism. This week, in response to the tragic death of George Floyd, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, and our Archbishop Wilton Gregory made statements calling us to a greater awareness and actions on the behalf of justice. As you may see, there are other statements and resources available on our website. Friends, also during the past several months, we have also experienced other stations of the cross in the form of the COVID-19 virus pandemic. For some of us, the virus has taken the lives of family members or friends. For many of us, the virus has threatened jobs and livelihood. And for all of us, the virus has required a radical commitment to measures of hygienic safety. This has required that our chapel and main church have their doors closed. But I would like to share with you this evening the process we are engaging to open these doors safely and slowly. I have established an 11-person task force consisting of parish and school and staff and parishioners and one special public health official, Michael Stoto, who is a parishioner. Their charge is to study the conditions necessary for reopening using metrics that adhere to the laws of the city and those established by the Center for Disease Control. Yes, folks, safe and science is driving the process. In the meantime, as we continue into this summer, we will have our various programs of prayer that will continue, morning and evening prayer, the daily homilies and Sunday video, the sacred space gatherings, the rosary for COVID victims, and those listed on our prayer wall. We've also started a Sunday morning coffee and donuts and various other Zoom gatherings. I also should mention that in a few weeks, the Parish Council will have their elections and they're looking for folks to run. All these are ways in which we are responding together, engaged together. I now turn to my pastoral associates to give you a sense of how this is also hearing, listening to your perspectives. Ashley Click will now present a survey that was done with you and as a way of determining our decisions.
Echoing Kevin's thanks during this time of pandemic and protest, It's been wonderful to see you at morning prayer, at Women's Wisdom, and just listening and learning from you all during this time. And that's one thing that we wanted to do with these surveys for the committee, is to continue to learn and to listen to what you wanted to share with us. So for the survey results, I'm going to kind of go through some of the highlights. Just so you know, for the opening of our campus survey, we had 618 responses. And for the virtual offerings and communication survey, 303. So in my time here during surveys, this was a pretty good response. The first question we asked in the opening year survey was, our local government has provided a guideline for phased opening, which best describes your attitude? And you can see that it's pretty close. 32.3% want to return in phase 4, which is a vaccination new normal stage. 31.5% want to return in a phase 3, which is gatherings of less than 250. Oops, sorry. We also asked about your attendance level and what you would feel comfortable about. 34.8% said 1/4 filled. 32.3% said half filled. 21.6% that you are not comfortable attending at this time or until we hit that phase 4. And 3.9% said 3/4 filled. We also asked what kind of precautions you would be looking for us to provide, and in this, or what your concerns were: social distancing, requiring face masks, new methods for distributing communion, limiting handouts, hand sanitizer, new methods for collecting offertory, no singing, and tracking attendance were the top suggestions. So when we came to the virtual gatherings, this was just an opportunity for the staff to see if we were meeting your needs. And there was one question that did say, how have we responded? And thankfully, you all thought we had been doing a pretty good job, which I think we have as well. So this just gives you a glimpse into what people have been participating in: morning prayer, evening prayer, praying in sacred space, women's wisdom are the top 3. The rosary, we started in May. Father Kevin is continuing into June. Martina will have another retreat this month as well. And so I think some of these things will skew, if you look at, and I didn't provide this slide, most of the people who responded were 55 and older, predominantly women. We did not have a lot of people who were NRE or who were YACs or kind of that youth ministry level responding. And most people who responded had been members of the parish for at least 20 years, just to give you a little bit of a snapshot on who did participate. We asked you about Zoom. I think back in early March, I did a lot of Zoom trainings, and I've heard this concern on some of the calls I participated in. 58.7% of you would like Zoom to continue indefinitely. You liked having the option of joining on Zoom even after Holy Trinity opens. We've heard from many of you who are, far out in the 67 zip codes that our parish consists of, that this was a wonderful way for you to reconnect. So we're taking that information in. 38.3% said until the campus is safely hosting groups on site, and 25.7% said until there is a vaccine. One thing that we thought was curious is that we had a lot of, I didn't know about this. For those of us, and for our dedicated Director of Communications, Carla Palin, this is a challenge. So I just want to take a minute while you're here to let you know that you can find almost anything you want to know on the landing page of our website at trinity.org. So in this example, on the left-hand side, you see all the announcements. These are the big ticket things we want you to know about. We always have the calendar here, and then many of the Zoom links you'll be able to find there. And then on the right-hand side, these are the quick links to the prayer wall. If you are not getting the e-letter of daily homilies or information about the Sunday YouTube recording, then you need to subscribe to the e-letter. So there are a couple of quick links there that will help you. And again, as David said in the chat, we do have a dedicated page where you can find any prayer resources, Catherine's Gospels, everything that we're doing. So you did have a couple of suggestions. You were very worried that daily homilies would not continue. or that virtual gatherings would not continue over the summer. You had suggestions of content about adult education, newcomer events, children's homily, family programming, concert of live music, a Bible study or study of the saints, movie moments of grace, and ongoing social justice seminars. The top questions and comments that we had were around the sacraments, confirmation, first communion, and baptisms. And I think this has been a question for our members in RCIA. The questions about why not having Mass outside, and are you able to live stream Masses, and will daily homilies and virtual gatherings continue? So since many of these are in my colleague's worship space, I'm going to pass it back to you, David.
Thanks, Ashley. Just to pick up this ball about liturgies. Many of you I see on morning and evening prayer, which I appreciate you gathering there with me on. I wanted just to reiterate what Ashley said, that we hear that a lot of you put great value in the online offerings that we are giving, and those will continue as we slowly reopen. The parish it must follow in its reopening process the district government. And right now, the district government is in stage 1. Holy Trinity and the task force that's making recommendations to Father Gillespie has not yet moved into stage 1. We're not quite there yet. That doesn't mean that we're closed for business, obviously, right? We've been gathering virtually, but we've also been gathering in person under in groups of 10 or less. We've been celebrating weddings for couples who are already on the schedule and couldn't move their date. We'll be baptizing some children for which there was a pastoral need, a very significant pastoral need. We've been baptizing those children. As we begin to open more, part of the task force's responsibility is going to say, which of these sacraments, which of these liturgies can we celebrate safely and well in a spirit that is true both to the sacrament itself and both to our community? I think that you can imagine what it will be like when we come back to Mass. We have to sit 6 feet apart. We probably won't be able to sing together. We will all be masked. And so we're gonna have questions as we begin to open, as the district begins to open into stage 2 and stage 3. So what I'm saying there about the sacraments is that we've been in touch with families who have had sacraments scheduled through September, asking them to consider moving the sacraments that they're celebrating until later. We don't yet know what those when the parish will enter stage 1, let alone when the parish will enter stage 2 and we can start to celebrate some of those sacraments. Particularly confirmation and first communion, we're talking about over 100 children and young people being either receiving their first communion or celebrating their confirmation. So even when we're in stage 2 and we're talking about gatherings of 50 and less, the task force is going to really have to measure and make suggestions about how to celebrate those sacraments when less than a quarter of those children and young people will be able to gather together at a time. You can see the kind of complexity that we're dealing with here. I also want to say that I understand how painful this is for families, for children who need to postpone, and adults who need to postpone the celebration of these sacraments. These are big milestone moments in people's lives of faith. And to be in this sort of odd waiting room can be a really difficult time. We want to celebrate those sacraments with you very much. We want to do that when it's safest for us. We've also gotten some suggestions about open air masses and gatherings. District government at this point prohibits us from having large gatherings of people. There are still limits on those numbers. We would also likely need to be using facilities that are not our own to host these, Visitation or Georgetown University, and both of those are probably not at places to allow large groupings of people to participate at Mass on their properties. Live stream Masses has been a really interesting question. The first answer is logistical. The district has a set limit of 10 people in a room at a certain time. And so that limits us to how many people can gather in the chapel to celebrate that Mass. And so what we've tried to do is, in these taped liturgies, to insert more faces that you know of lectors and cantors, music that's familiar, so that we can feel at least a little bit connected to what our normal Sunday feels like. The second question about live stream is a bit more theoretical. I think that we can all at this point, after 2 months of being away from Mass at the parish, I think that we can all agree that Mass online is not the same. And it's not the same for for the reasons that you know. You're not seeing the people that you're sitting next to. You can't sing with people. But at a more fundamental level, we can't participate in the liturgy in the way that we know we should and we know we have. We can't receive communion, right? We can't eat and drink together at this point. We can't be in shared space and hear the word of God proclaimed. And so the Masses that we're taping are hopefully holdovers until we can gather again to make us feel more connected. In the next week or so, we're going to be distributing, adding yet another web page site to our parish webpage about how to celebrate Sunday at home with your family, by yourself, or with even other people on Zoom in the way that we've been doing morning and evening prayer. And it'll compile resources for you to keep Sunday holy, but not also have to pretend like a Mass online is going to be the same as Mass in person. And then to the last question there, will daily homilies and virtual gatherings continue? Yes, we will. Some of the daily homilies, we're going to be adding in the voices of lay folks so that we can get a diversity of voices, particularly since those daily homilies are out of the context of Mass. We're a bit more free to give voice to other experiences. So I hope that you take advantage of those and enjoy those.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to let you know some of the things that are going on with Ignatian Spirituality and Prayer, the ministry we've been offering, and what's upcoming. As during this time of pandemic, we were able to pivot pretty quickly and easily to an online ministry and continue offering ongoing spiritual direction and the spiritual exercises. If you are interested in spiritual direction, please contact my colleague Martina O'Shea. Her contact info is on the website, and she can talk with you about spiritual direction. Also ongoing has been praying in sacred space on Thursdays and Saturdays, and on Sundays you can get an email with the guided Ignatian Gospel contemplations. And if you don't get that email and don't want to get it, you can still find those on the website if you navigate through the menu to Ignatian Spirituality resources. In terms of what's upcoming for this summer so far, this is what we have in mind so far. We have the God Our Refuge and Our Strength retreat, which is a daily life, a retreat in daily life, a week-long retreat later this month. You have to register by this Sunday. There'll be at least 2 spiritual exercises information sessions. So if you're interested in making the full spiritual exercises, those sessions will be held on June 20th and July 18th, and the info will be in the e-letter that comes out. And I'm also in the very, very early planning stages of an online course on prayer in response to some feedback that I received from people who would like to learn different ways to pray and who feel maybe that they're beginners at prayer and would like to explore that. So there'll be more information about that. And then on the slide, you can see a list. I won't go through it all, but the list of the groups of our parish groups that are affiliated with Ignatian Spirituality and Prayer that continue to meet. So it's been wonderful to see. I've been very encouraged by the way our groups have just said, okay, well, we'll just do this in a different setting and we'll be creative with it. It's been really great. One group that's really taken this to heart has been, of course, our young adult community. They are meeting every Thursday for faith sharing. They're meeting monthly for a liturgy of the word online. Happy hour used to be weekly, but that was too much. So now it's every other Friday, and sometimes it's a game night. And then they have a book club, which is now reading the book Silence, that meets every other Wednesday. So our young adults are keeping very active and keeping in touch with each other. And we had 41 young adults on our online afternoon retreat in May. So that's it for the young adult community.
So you've continued our tradition of being parishioners for others during this time, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you and hit some of the highlights. At the beginning of this pandemic, when we didn't really know what we were in for, we had 40 parishioners call close to 1,800 other parishioners to check in and make sure that they were aware of the virtual offerings and the daily homilies. Many of you volunteered to shop for parishioners, and we're continuing to do that. I think our top shopper is Juan Bellman, and I just want to give him a little shout out. You've made an average of 1,600 sandwiches each week for Martha's Table, and I want to thank Shannon Dunn for coordinating that. Mike Conway and his team did not allow this to interrupt their very valuable Saturday and Sunday suppers. These have continued with the support of groups like Jetties and Good Stuff Eatery, and even this past Sunday, they served 72 people. On May 16th, we had many of you participate in our neighborhood Do Something Good for Your Neighbor Day. You donated over 1,000 snack bags and toiletry bags, and some was overwhelmed. And because of their gratitude, we're going to continue to do that over the summer. And so our next collection date of just snack bags is on June 13th. And Eric Nickel, who runs this program for us, will be waiting for you patiently at the corner of 36th and O. I also want to highlight Katie Randall and Lee Jones, who have sewn hundreds and hundreds of masks, not for the staff, but for people at the Father McKenna Center and Hope in a Home. Parishioners of all ages have made cards, and they've purchased meals for families here in El Salvador. They've crafted friendship bracelets and bought soccer balls to send to our sister parish in Haiti. They've continued to advocate for our environment and for the rights of immigrants and refugees and for racial justice. With your generous support, the HT Migrant Team is able to accompany 5 families. Before quarantine, we worked with Georgetown law students and Attaché Corporate Housing to be able to provide short-term housing and basic necessities for 2 asylum seekers who were able to be released before the quarantine. Your donations to the Social Justice COVID Relief Fund have enabled us to say yes to any and all requests from individuals and from organizations like Food for the Poor, the Keno Border Initiative, Martha's Table, N Street Village, Sacred Heart, SUM, and the Spanish Catholic Center. And I just want to say, for me, it's wonderful to be able to say yes whenever I receive an email or a call. So thank you. On the programming side, over the past few months, the focus has been on the tithe and finalizing those grants. And we have awarded grants to address education, food insecurity, homelessness, youth, and restorative justice. Our committees of Migrant Team, Restorative Justice, and the Green Team have continued to meet and provide opportunities to gather and learn. And thanks to Anne and Liz, we had an amazing 50 Days of Easter Women's Wisdom that just concluded. And for me, it was a really wonderful experience to gather in that way and to share that wisdom. So what's coming up? We have a lot of confirmed speakers in June. We have an individual from the CARE Coalition to talk about immigration and advocating at a local level. Father Peter Gives, who's from A Faith That Does Justice, is going to kick off our new kind of lunch and learn community. And the idea of that is that you bring your iced tea and you settle in at 12:30, and we have an informal conversation. And we'll be having various people be a part of that series. So that gives you an idea of some of the other groups that we have coming. Sister Joan, Solidarity in Sudan, Pastor Selena of Mount Zion, and then based on the feedback we had this May, we will be doing some programming, continue our Women Who Stayed programming. And then we do have Tithe partner projects. The committee's working on doing videos and interviews with some of our partners so that you can get a firsthand sense of who they are and how they're enduring this pandemic period and how they're being impacted. And then of course, we'll continue the monthly service opportunities. So that is what we are doing in social justice. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you are doing for our community here and at our sister parishes.
Good evening. I'm Judith Brousseau, the Pastoral Associate for Faith Formation. And again, as I want to echo my colleagues' words, it's so good to see so many of your faces. We ended the year like everybody did, having to pivot. And so I really have to say a grateful thank you to all who served as catechists, who went from what they thought was a traditional in-class experience to pivoting online, competing with the public schools to provide content and information to our kids. Thank you to all the parents that supported it. It ended up to be perhaps not 100% successful as we might have liked it to be, but everybody was pleased and grateful at the end. Echoing David's words, those who have prepared for sacraments are in that waiting period. We are with you prayerfully as we wait for the day when we can celebrate with you the sacraments certainly of confirmation and First Eucharist. Having said that, many of our sacramental programs still continue. We have a marriage prep session that's still online. Baptismal prep is, once again, will be offered in June. We have adult confirmation, and all of our children who are preparing for next year being received into the church are still actively meeting and keeping faith with us. The LGBTQIA ministry continues to meet. That is a new ministry at Holy Trinity. And every month there's a few more faces and a lot more outreach and more interest from other members of the community. So we're very excited about those gatherings. As always, really June is about cleaning up the classrooms and getting the bins out of all the classrooms and then restarting for next year. So Sandy and I are in the active process of trying to plan for a couple different scenarios as my colleagues are, and be ready for whatever is healthy for our children and for the rest of the community. We're also pairing with Kathleen Desjardins to offer a virtual youth choir this summer. The joy of this is everybody gets to stay in their living room and sing at the top of their lungs, hopefully reinforcing the songs we sing at liturgy and some other the fun songs in our Catholic tradition. We're working on gospel stories for children aimed at the younger elementary school age, which will be a virtual presentation. And we're hoping to offer a book discussion on Phyllis Sagano's work that she was here a year ago to talk about and be able to discuss. That will also be virtual. And as always, as we are not quite finished with one set of sacraments, we're preparing the year and how we might interact with parents and youth as they prepare for Eucharist and reconciliation. So we really rely on volunteers, either in the classroom or to get much of this work done. So I'm very grateful for all of you who donate, as well as participate as catechists, mentors, sponsors. Thank you.
Hi, it's good to be with all of you. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Rebecca. I am the coordinator of youth ministry and youth confirmation. And just to fill you in on a few things my ministry has been working on. We finished sacramental preparation for confirmation, for youth confirmation in April and in May via Zoom. Since we are one of the sacraments that has between 100 and 110 youth, preparing, I broke them up into groups of 9 to 11 students and met with each group over the course of a week in April and in May, just to wrap up our preparation and stick with the timeline that I had originally set. The youth were supposed to be confirmed these next 2 upcoming weekends. However, that will not be happening. They too are in that waiting period. And those youth confirmation masses have been postponed to September 12th and 13th. So I definitely echo what both David and Judith said, that it is difficult, especially to enter these next 2 weekends and to be thinking, oh, we were supposed to be celebrating confirmation at this time, and then to know that we do have to wait. And I hear you when you say this is difficult to wait, and I'm here for you and here with you. In this time of waiting, I've been inviting students into the current youth ministry activities and just continuing to bring them in that way, continuing to engage them in that way. I also have one more thing planned for them, but can't expand on it too much. It's still a little bit in the works. And then in regards to youth confirmation, just planning for upcoming sacramental classes and high school peer ministry, both with that COVID plan and then that non-COVID plan. I feel like I always have to have those 2 plans in mind, just as we continue to progress towards the fall. On the other end of things, youth ministry. For youth ministry, my age range that I focus on is 7th through 12th grade, because 7th and 8th are in youth confirmation, and then high school students as well. We, during this time in isolation, we've been continuing with our virtual youth group on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Via Zoom. They're titled Wednesday Wraps. And it's open to any 7th through 12th grade student, especially those students that are now rising into that grade level. And WRAP is just an acronym for Write, Reflect, Apply, Pray, which is just a form of Lectio Divina, kind of an interactive form. But we do a little bit more than that. It's just a space to be together and to check in and to share life and try our best to do an activity virtually, and then always reflection and discussion, and ending with either that form of Lectio Divina or some type of other prayer. And I also try to present the youth with kind of a weekly challenge that helps to put their faith into action or just deeper reflection. I also record myself on Instagram, on our youth ministry Instagram page, doing live prayer for about 15-20 minutes, about 5 days a week, either morning prayer or the examen, depending on the day and the time. And so if you're on Instagram, you're more than welcome to like our page, and then you'll be able to see that and join in. And then also collaborating with the social justice ministry, just to promote service and advocacy. Originally, I was planning on taking a group to the Romero Center in Camden, New Jersey, which is a service learning trip in July, but that will not be happening either. But we do, when collaborating with the social justice ministry, we do have a few initiatives that we've been discussing, as well as a few ideas I would like to implement kind of in the future. And then lastly, just planning again for the upcoming year, both, as I said, with those COVID plans and then kind of those non-COVID plans, and planning some of my own ideas that I would eventually like to implement.
I think I missed my cue, folks, but let me go to the Holy Trinity School. Cyber school it's so successful, and it'll continue for a while, but the students and the children and the faculty are really engaged with the parents. It's amazing. You can just see the pictures. Tomorrow night at this time, we'll have a form of a graduation, but the real celebration has to wait till September. Just to give you an idea, today, the children, they had a competition of what they call houses, a la Harry Potter. But the house that won is named after Anne-Marie Beecraft. Anne-Marie Beecraft was a parishioner here, African-American, freed slave, who started a school in the 1820s for children who were African-American. Our children are embracing a parishioner who is noble and courageous and innovative. That's what our children are getting. We also know that our children asked for a moment of silence for what was going on in the streets and to pray for the victims of the violence. Kevin McShane and his team are doing amazing work, and it's a joy. But 2 days ago, we had the awards, and it was wonderful, but you couldn't embrace them. You couldn't be there. And I know I felt the pain, but I know the children did, the teachers did, the parents did. They are resilient and they're creative and they're finding joys in the different ways. So I'm so proud of our school, the parents, the teachers, administrators, but especially our children. Two other things I wanted to mention that tomorrow, at Georgetown University at 12 o'clock, the Institute of Catholic Thought and Social Life is sponsoring a talk with a panel with Archbishop Gregory to discuss the racial issues that we're facing. Also, on the June 5th and 6th, the circle gatherings are following up on some of the issues of reopening and other dynamics that are being presented. Listening to the presentations, by the way, I'm so proud of my team, our staff, the ways you, the parishioners, are engaged in the parish. You know, the doors are closed, but the parish is wide open. You hear the activities. Several years ago, when we had the parish assessment review, the study, the key operative word was engagement. You, the parishioners of this parish, are very engaged, and it creates that energy. It's the engagement of the Holy Spirit. We just celebrate the Feast of Pentecost, and Pentecost continues in so many ways. So I thank you for those. Again, I have to say, we are facing financial challenges, and we're grateful for your contributions. We will be asking you to continue your support. Finally, let me, I should also mention tomorrow night at 6, there is at the Washington Hebrew congregation a Shabbat in which we're all invited beginning at 6 o'clock, interfaith service for healing and hope. So I invite you to that. As I listened to my colleagues and the energies that we're presenting, and the wider area, I think we come back to trust. I like to think of stations of trust. There is this way in which we are facing how we have that lack of trust in some areas of our culture. We have a loss of trust in some public leaders. We have desire for trust in the reopening process, so not to be afraid, to be reassured that when we open, the spaces that we come into are hygienically safe. So we then trust that people will follow the regulations. As I mentioned, we have a task force around this, but ultimately it's each of us. When we come together, we trust that we are following what is expected of us, so that it's not that we're in this together, and that we have a greater sense of trust, community, and solidarity. Within that context, let me give some of you are familiar with the Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a Jesuit's letter to a relative, right in the battlefields of the First World War. It's a prayer of trust that I think it's so appropriate as we go through our journeys together. So let us conclude with these words. Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And yet, it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on as though you could be today or time. That is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill will make you of you tomorrow. Only God can say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that God's hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete. My brothers and sisters, thank you for being here. Thank you for your engagement, and may God continue to bless us. Bless our nation, bless our church, bless the poor, and bless those relationships, particularly within the African American community and in all of us, that we become a people of trust as we go through our stations of the cross. Thank you, and God bless.
One final announcement, if you'd like to, and you haven't already registered for Friday or Saturday conversation circles, to respond to what you've heard today, I've just put in the chat Ashley Click's email address. You can email her at aclick@trinity.org to register for some more conversation about what Father Gillespie shared with you today. Thanks so much. Have a great night, everybody. It's good to see you.